Have you ever been, reading online comments and just stopped and thought, who is this person? Like, this is absolutely not how they act in real life. Maybe you've seen it, a friend who's usually pretty mild-mannered suddenly becomes this fierce keyboard warrior. Or someone you know who's quite shy starts sharing really personal stuff in a comment section. It's something we've all probably seen, right? And today we're doing a deep dive into the psychology behind it. It's called the digital disinhibition effect. We've pulled together a really compelling stack of research, articles, you name it, all trying to shed light on why people can seem to, well, transform when they step into the digital world. So our mission here is to unpack this whole concept, get into its surprising facets, and explore what it actually means for how we live and, connect online these days.
Yeah, and what's really fascinating, I think, is that while it feels super modern, all tied up with social media and everything, the actual idea, not new at all. This term, digital disinhibition effect, it was coined by a psychologist, John Suler, way back in 2004. It's been around, and it helps us understand behavior across, well, pretty much everything. Online forums, social media, even just messaging apps.
Okay,
Right.
2004, that's earlier than I might have guessed. So let's unpack it then. At its core, what is the digital disinhibition effect? What are we actually talking about here?
Basically, it refers to that phenomenon where people tend to behave more openly online than they would face-to-face. Sometimes that openness is, more aggressive. Sometimes it's surprisingly intimate. It's really about feeling freer to express yourself on the internet. And, this is key, that freedom can lead to results that are both, well, positive and also quite negative.
That's a really useful distinction right off the bat. So, okay, why does this happen? What are the sort of ingredients that mix together to create this effect? Because our sources lay out, 6 key features? Almost like psychological triggers. This is where it gets really interesting, I think. Let's dig into them. First one up is anonymity.
Right, anonymity.
Yeah.
Think about it when you feel like your real identity is hidden. Maybe you're using a screen name or your profile gives nothing away. That feeling of being protected, it really lowers your self-awareness. And crucially, your sense of accountability. If people don't know it's you, you might say or do things you absolutely wouldn't if your name and face were attached. It's that feeling of being, well, untraceable.
So it's less about actually being anonymous and more the psychological feeling of it, that sense of they don't know it's me.
Exactly. That psychological shield is powerful.
Okay. And building on that, what about just not being able to see the other person? That's the next point, right? Invisibility. How does that change the dynamic?
Hugely. Yeah, invisibility. When you don't have those nonverbal cues, you can't see their facial expression, their body language, can't hear their tone of voice, all that's gone. And without that immediate visual feedback, people feel, well, less judged. It creates this sense of detachment, like your words are just floating out there, disconnected from the real human impact they might have. Makes it easier to be harsh or maybe overly familiar.
That lack of immediate reaction,
Yeah.
it removes a massive social filter, doesn't it? Okay, and related to that, there's asynchronicity, the timing factor. How does that play in?
Right, asynchronicity. Online chats, forums, comment sections, they often don't require an instant response like a face-to-face conversation does. So you have time to think, to stew maybe, to formulate a really strong opinion or even a quite extreme reaction without the pressure of having to say it right then and there with someone looking at you. You can craft that perfect zinger or that really cutting remark in a way you probably wouldn't or couldn't in the heat of a real-time conversation.
So does that extra time mean people craft more extreme views? Or is it more just the absence of that immediate social pushback, that sort of real-time correction?
I think it's largely the lack of immediate social pressure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that time lets you maybe build up your point in your own head, almost like an echo chamber, without interruption. So when you finally hit send or post, you're delivering this fully formed, maybe quite unvarnished opinion, not the more give and take version that might emerge live.
Okay, got it. Now this next one's a bit of a mouthful, but it sounds really insightful. Solipsistic introjection. What on earth does that mean in practice? How does it affect how we see others online?
Yeah, it sounds complex, but the idea is actually quite intuitive once you get it.
Yeah.
It's about how in those digital spaces where you're missing all the real world cues, your brain kind of fills in the blanks.
Yeah.
You project your own thoughts, feelings, maybe even your own assumptions or fears onto the other person. You're basically creating their personality, their tone inside your own head.
So you're not really reacting to them.
Often, no. You're reacting to this version of them that you've constructed. It's why, a simple misunderstanding or a typo online can sometimes blow up into this massive argument. You're essentially arguing with the voice you've put in their head.
Wow. Okay, so you might literally be arguing with a figment of your own imagination dressed up as someone else.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's pretty mind-bending.
it really is. It explains a lot of online conflict, I think.
And tied into that, there's dissociative imagination. How does that work, that sort of mental split?
This is where people start to see their online life and their offline life as separate compartments, almost like their online persona is a different character. What happens online doesn't feel quite real or doesn't count in the same way as their offline actions. Our sources talk about people maintaining these, quite aggressive or unpleasant online identities while being perfectly normal, even quiet, offline.
Like a digital alter ego.
Pretty much. An alter ego that can absorb all the negativity or the risky behavior, kind of leaving their real self feeling untouched by it. Over time, though, that dissociation can blur the lines.
Right, a way to rationalize, perhaps. Okay, and the final feature is the minimization of status and authority. How does the internet flatten things out?
Well, online, a lot of the usual cues about status, like age, job title, how someone's dressed, their physical presence, they're often invisible, or at least much less obvious. So traditional social hierarchies get blurred, and that can make people feel much more emboldened to, say, challenge someone they perceive as an authority figure or ridicule someone in a way they just wouldn't dream of doing face to face.
Because those usual markers of respect your elders or defer to the expert are just gone.
Exactly. Or significantly reduced. It levels the playing field, but sometimes that leveling leads to less respect, more aggression. You see it all the time in comment sections or forums. Status gets ignored, projections run wild, and things can spiral.
It's really quite something how those 6 things, anonymity, invisibility, asynchronicity, solipsistic introjection, dissociative imagination, and minimizing status, how they all weave together. So is this effect always, a bad thing, leading to trolls and keyboard warriors? Or is there potentially a good side to this digital openness?
That's a crucial question, and the research is really clear on this.
Hmm.
It splits into two types. They call it benign versus toxic disinhibition. So benign disinhibition, that's the positive side. It's when people use that online freedom for good things, like someone sharing deep fears or vulnerabilities they'd never voice in person, or seeking help from an online support group, or even just expressing kindness or empathy more freely because they feel less self-conscious. It can also be about people feeling safe enough, maybe in an anonymous space, to be open about their identity.
Okay, so it can actually foster connection and support.
Absolutely. But then you have the flip side, toxic disinhibition. And that's where all the negative stuff comes in. We're talking cyberbullying, hate speech, trolling, the really damaging behaviors. It also includes things like sexting or sharing explicit material without consent, or even encouraging harmful acts, participating in those online pylons or harassment mobs.
Wow. It's incredible, really, how the exact same underlying psychological mechanisms can fuel both genuine support and vicious attacks.
It really is. Depends on the person, the context, the platform,
Yeah.
lots of factors.
So taking all this in, what does it actually mean for us, for you listening? How does understanding this change how we should view the online world?
Well, if you think about the bigger picture, this digital disinhibition effect has some pretty significant real-world consequences. Let's just touch on a couple. Mental health is a big one. On the one hand, like we said, that digital openness can be really positive emotional release, finding community, but it also makes people incredibly vulnerable.
Vulnerable to what?
To online aggression, to manipulation, to that toxic disinhibition from others. Imagine pouring your heart out online, seeking support, and getting hit with a wave of anonymous hate. The impact on mental health can be severe. And then there's something like online radicalization. Anonymity can make people feel bolder about expressing extreme views, and then online echo chambers can amplify those views without any real-world checks. Disinhibition plays a role there, too.
Yeah, you can see how that could happen.
And finally, think about the tech companies. They're constantly grappling with this, right? Trying to balance free expression with the need to moderate the toxic behavior that disinhibition fuels. It's a massive challenge given the scale of it all.
Absolutely. It helps make sense of so much online behavior, good and bad. Our sources also mentioned some related theories, didn't they, just to sort of round out the picture?
Right, yeah. A few related concepts help. There's de-individuation, which comes from social psychology. It's that idea that when you're in a group, especially an anonymous one, you can lose your sense of individual identity and self-awareness. A bit like mob mentality, but online.
Okay.
Then there's the broader term online disinhibition syndrome. That's really just another label that covers both the benign and the toxic sides we talked about, a more general umbrella term.
Gotcha.
And one I find particularly interesting is the Proteus effect. This suggests that the way your online avatar looks or is presented can actually influence your behavior. Like if you have a really imposing avatar, you might act more confidently. Or if it's stereotypically attractive, you might act more sociably. Your digital self influences your real self.
Fascinating. So our online choices shape us back. Okay, so we've journeyed through this digital disinhibition effect, unpacked those 6 key features, looked at the difference between benign and toxic forms, and seen how it ripples out, affecting everything from our personal mental health right up to how online platforms are designed. It definitely paints a much clearer picture of why, your normally calm colleague might suddenly erupt in that email chain, or why strangers share so much online.
It really does. And it leaves us with a pretty important question, I think. The next time you're online, maybe you're about to comment or share something, or even just scrolling through, maybe pause and think, how might these forces, this disinhibition, be playing out for you, for the person you're interacting with? Maybe just recognizing these mechanisms are at play could help us all navigate the digital world with a bit more awareness, maybe even a bit more empathy.
That's a great point. And maybe something for you, the listener, to reflect on. Can you think of a specific time and interaction you saw or were part of online where you can now clearly see the digital disinhibition effect at work? And perhaps more importantly, now that you know about this effect, how might that awareness change your own behavior online or how you react to others moving forward? Something to think about.